Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A very early good morning to you, Jenny, who has joined us from the other side of the Atlantic. 6 a.m. for you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is. Sun's
Oh,
just coming up right now, and it's going to be a good day.
I love it. Definitely is going to be a good afternoon for me. So, yes, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Anyone who's joining, this is why we're slightly later than usual in terms of timing. But if you're watching this replay, make yourself comfortable. Essentially, it says all in the title. We're going to talk about purpose, which I'm so excited about. This is part of the summer series. I'm sure some of you are away or planning your holidays and just feel like, I don't want to talk about my CV or my career. So this is why we're taking a holistic approach. And without further ado, I'm going to make sure that I'll give you the chance to introduce yourself, Jenny, and what you do, so we can get into the nitty-gritty of the topic.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for having me today. I love talking about purpose. I'm currently a clarity and purpose coach, and it came after my own journey in the corporate world, having a high stress job and then reaching my own level of burnout and kind of doing a massive 180 in my life and reconnecting more with my own purpose and my health, and prioritizing those things. So, yeah, that's what brings me here today. And I just have a passion for helping other people connect with that part of themselves and shifting their beliefs around what their purpose is and what that might look like in their day to day life.
It's interesting and it's a funny timing because yesterday night I was attending an event and we were just randomly talking with that person and she was just talking about her career journey. I was sharing mine and she said, "Oh, what made you do what you're doing right now?" And I explained a little bit like you, and this is one of the reasons I was so happy that you came here is that I experienced burnout too. And she actually rephrased it and she said, "Yeah, burnout did you." And I think it's an interesting way of seeing things. So if you don't mind me asking, would that be okay to share maybe a little bit more about what happened specifically for you to actually, make that 180 change in your life?
Yeah, it actually, the stress took a toll on my body. So it was more
Mhm.
of a health issue that I came across that made me start to question like the connection between stress and our health and our mind body
Yeah.
connection. And so I kind of went into the integrative health coaching field to understand even just my own journey a bit more and how I could improve that part of my life. And then noticing how many stressors I had in my life. And some of those stressors, yes, are like the day to day job part things, but a lot of them were just due to the misalignment I had with different things in my life and the stress and inflammation that that was causing. So yeah, it's a big picture thing, but the key tipper was definitely like huge health issues that I just had to face.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, it's not funny, but interesting that you mentioned that. I actually had the same, and I want to pick your brain on this because I find it so fascinating that we go so far as our bodies have to talk to us because apparently we're not listening to our minds, right? I mean, the brain sends signals, and I don't know what's going on. I know for me, for example, I was just in a tunnel. I was like, no, 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 I have to get over that, that hurdle. I can do it. I was just convincing myself. Yet my body was just showing up with red plaque, be like, no, you just have to stop. Like, you have to just do something else. So, anyway, I'd love to have your input on that, either through your own journey or even through the work you've done with some of the clients. Why do you think for most of the people, it takes going into a physical health issue to realize that actually things are completely misaligned for us?
That's a really good question. I think our bodies are amazing at what we can push them to do. And so some of it, I think, is we take for granted what that is for
Yeah.
so many years, right? And because we can push our bodies quite a lot and get results from it. And so
True.
it's kind of that way of being. And it's also celebrated in our society to push yourselves and to have maximum productivity and maximum output. And you're doing so much day to day and it's celebrated. So I think that kind of allows us to push our true needs to the wayside, especially because it's often to slow down and to do things differently than everyone else is doing. And the other part, I think, is there's a level of discomfort in change, in shifting to, again, doing things differently that other people are not doing. Like most people are pushing themselves past that point. So to be the person to stand up and say, no, I can't do that. I need to pay attention to this. No, that's not in alignment with me or my values. That's uncomfortable. And so it's kind of, we want to be comfortable. And even if that means
Being unhappy.
in the moment until
Yeah.
our health becomes the main discomfort. So it's like choosing the discomfort that we know, or the comfort we know, in lieu of like that future discomfort. And so it's kind of shifting that and taking a step back and taking a look at the big picture of, okay, like what am I sacrificing right now that's going to lead to future health or discomfort that I have complete control over, that I can do something about today.
I mean, fascinating. I love the fact that you brought comfort and discomfort in the conversation, because I think you're right. I think there is something around, like you said, just the knowing, even though it's not something that makes us happy, it's just more comfortable than the unknown and being on the other side. Like there is such a big thing around comfort zone. And I'm a big fan. Like my number one value is growth. So I tend to push myself, but even with that being my number one value, I still find myself and pick myself up. Oh, you're way too much in your comfort zone right now. Come on, let's do something. But point is, I mean, it's I just find it fascinating. So what do you do with your clients, or even what have you done personally in terms of going out of that comfort zone discomfort, if I can call it this way?
Yeah, usually when someone reaches out to me, they're already at that point where they're willing
Okay,
to
they're
be
ready.
uncomfortable,
Okay.
to make a shift in their life. Like it's their that level of misalignment or disconnect or unfulfillment or just dissatisfaction in what their life is around them, has become more uncomfortable than the comfort of staying in it. And so when they come to me, it's about assessing what is the next step. Like, what would that look like to make change? Like, where do you go from here, knowing that
Yeah.
you want change? And so it's a very holistic approach. We start with a foundation of building up, like, what are your values? Like, what are those things that you do want in your life? Because a lot of us, we inherit values from our parents or others around us. And so,
Yeah. Or the culture or the country that we're in. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So it's really taking an honest look at, okay, like, what do I value? What do I want to see in my life? As well as diving deep into what your unique purpose and gifts are. And there's a bunch of tools. Like, it's not as an esoteric question as we think it is. Like, we think it's this needle in the haystack that we need to figure out our purpose and what is it that we can do. And I like to shift the belief from purpose being what we do to who we are. It's our unique essence or way of being that we can bring to everything in our life. And so it really opens up the possibilities of what that is. So that's part of it. And then we do have tools to figure out what exactly that is. It's not something that you have to go on a hero's journey to discover over the next 10 years, and it's going to be this huge thing. There are tools that I use that it's very clear and cut of what your unique purpose is. And so diving into that and then creating a vision of what that feels like, what that might look like, and not having a rigid vision, again, of a specific way of doing it, but having that vision of what that feels like so that you'll know when you're there. You'll know what is in alignment, and the tools of discernment to decide what that is, to make choices to get you there too. So yeah, it's a big picture journey.
It absolutely is. And I think you've mentioned a couple of interesting points here, which is good because, this is all about reconnecting with your purpose. So anyone who is actually wondering how to do that, I think the key takeaway I'm keeping in mind from what you shared is that The purpose is not something that you just find out in a room after a quest of whatever how many months, years of searching. It actually, like you said, is making sure that you allow yourself to, experiment and do things because essentially it resonates with you and who you are. I always say to my client, it's not a switch that you can just turn on and off and just it's going to appear and just magically everything changes. You have, like you said, to use certain tools, to be willing to do the work on yourself, to actually find out those answers about what is it that you truly want, what is it that is important to you. That's the first thing I think that is important to emphasize about purpose. And the second thing is that, like you said, when it comes to purpose, it can also evolve. Like, I feel like a lot of people are putting so much pressure on themselves. And I see that with some of my clients. They say, oh my God, like, what if we find something like the one career path, but I don't know, like 5 years down the line, I don't want to do that anymore. And this is why I told them we do the amount of work in the introspection phase, like you said, using a bunch of various tools, because essentially I want to equip yourself. I want you to feel that you've got everything you need in your toolkit. So whatever happens next, you can always tap into that toolkit, revisit some of the tools, some of the exercises, but don't feel like it's just a one stop that you have to go and that's it is the end, right? It's a constant evolving thing. Not to say you've got to question yourself every day, but to say that you can be kind to yourself by accepting the fact that purpose is going to evolve. I know before going live we talked, for example, about motherhood and how things like that potentially that happen in life can just completely change the narrative, or things that might happen as well, either professionally, personally, that could think like that could make you evolve your thinking when it comes to purpose. What are
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on that? Like, what would you recommend for anyone who feels like really scared of owning who they are because they're worried that this might change in the coming future?
Yeah, I think so. I have a belief that we're all here with our unique gifts and our purpose, our essence. It's more of our way of being
Mm-hmm.
that we can weave throughout everything we do. And it's when you're living that expression of yourself that people really see you and they see your value and they see what you're bringing to the table. And so when you ignore that and try and fit a role or a set of skills or a level of productivity, you're really leaving like this special, beautiful piece of yourself on the table. And so that's why you're not feeling fulfilled, because you're leaving that part out. And so to integrate it into your work, into your home life, into your relationships is what really amplifies your life experience. And it's the thing that brings people to you that are a match for you. Like it brings those exciting moments into your life. And so it's really just amplifying the way that you live life into a more fulfilling and joyful existence. And so, yes, it might feel a little scary if you haven't brought that part of yourself to the table yet. And I often, if that's a scary thing for my clients, I often walk through exercises of, okay, what areas of your life do you feel safe to start expressing that part of yourself? Like, in what areas can you own that those are your gifts and they're your natural abilities that really shine? Work can be a hard one to bring that into, but there are really practical ways to translate that into your job and your daily tasks and what that looks like. And yes, it may mean that you, to be in alignment with that and to be able to bring that forward, you might have to shift careers or jobs or roles. But there's a huge opportunity there in that. And it's going to be a missed opportunity if you choose the comfort of just what you know. And you're going to continue to feel unfulfilled. And it's like once you have that feeling that you feel unfulfilled and there's something more out there, you can't really ignore it.
Yeah, you can't backtrack. It's
You
just
can't, yeah.
it's forward from there. Talking about forwards, let's talk a little bit more about how it looks like to potentially reconnecting with our purpose. I mean, I love this time of year. Days are longer, or maybe it's just me in my own body, whatever that is. But I feel like still things are a little bit, quieter, and whatever is going on, even if you're still working and so on. I feel like summer is a fantastic time to just do things at a different pace that we used to do the rest of the year. So I'd love to have your views when it comes to any recommendations for anyone looking to reconnect with their purpose, like really using this time to recenter themselves and think, okay, how do I actually reconnect with what matters to me?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have some tools I'm going to share, but
Mm.
because it is purpose is more of your essence or way of being, it does involve a deeper connection with yourself. And so
Knowing who you are, right? You have to start with
exactly.
you.
So
Mm.
part of that is spending time alone and
Mm.
in thought and in reflection. And maybe that's journaling, maybe that's meditation, but it's a great practice is simply just asking those questions of yourself and journaling on that, saying, what are my passions? Like, what do I feel is missing? What would my ideal life actually look like? Like, what would a day in the life look like for me? What activities would I be tapping into? What would that feel like? So, part of that is a reflection process. And some of the tools that I use with my clients to help is some values work. The work of Dr. John Demartini. He has a book called The Values Factor. In the last couple of years, he's translated that book into an online, I guess it's like a questionnaire, but it really helps you nail down what that is for you. So I'm going to share the link for that here. If you have time, you can go through that and figure out what your values are.
Perfect.
That's a great starting point, a foundation, because if you don't know what that is, it's really hard to understand what aligns with your values. So it's a great tool of discernment. Another aspect is so based on the belief that our universe is very much like a mathematical hologram. I think everything is on purpose. Everything comes down to an exact science. Like we weren't just made at random, that we were made very much on purpose. And each of us has a unique blueprint based on that. There's a really amazing tool called the Genius Report, and it's based on your birth date. And how that fits into that universal hologram of that mathematical equation. But it really gets into where you fit in an organization, what your skills are naturally that you would bring to a team, what role you would play in a team, how you influence other people around you, how you are influenced by other people. And it kind of just gives you a better picture of what your natural abilities are and where you would naturally thrive and what type of environment that would be. So that's a really amazing tool that I just discovered in the last 2 weeks. So
Nice.
it's amazing. And lots of companies actually starting to hire trainers based on it. So you can hire employees based on their genius and place them on a team based on how they work together. And even going out into, if you are interviewing for a new role based on this information that you have, there's so many ways that you can speak to it, to speak to more of, again, your genius that you're actually passionate about based on productivity based interviews where you're just, everyone's spouting the same things. Like I work well under pressure and I have a high attention to detail. Like those things may be true, but also I warn people, if you're selling somebody on the things that drain you, you're going to be held to continually do the things that drain you. And so it's
That's very
best
true.
to figure out what those things are that come naturally to you, that light you up, that you thrive in. And so I'll share that tool here. It's just called the Genius Report.
Perfect.
And there's a free version of both that you can do. So it's a great jumping off point to kind of start connecting with yourself more and understanding yourself before you kind of jump to the end of like, what job should I apply for next? So I think this is like the in-between work that you should do. So it seems a little less overwhelming and you have a bit more clarity.
That's amazing. I've just put that as well in the chat. I mean, it does resonate with some of the work that I'm doing with my clients as well, like exploring the values, exploring, how you best communicate, either in terms of you verbally, it could be even in writing. And I feel like, I don't know your thoughts on that, but also at this stage, don't be afraid to ask for feedback, even with your friends, with your family. Like, if you're at this stage of your life, your career, where you just feel like you're a little bit disconnected, I think it's important to tackle all angles. So not necessarily just pressurize yourself to get the right next job and truly thrive and just break all of the patterns. It actually takes some time to properly reconnect, and sometimes it could also help to have those people who have known you for years, if not decades, on the personal angle, because they might help you to remember a part of yourself that you might want to bring, for example, in that career path that you've either forgotten about or you just didn't know how this part of you would fit into a career.
Yeah, I think it's important to, yeah, to have someone to mirror that back to you. And maybe that is like, oh, I just did this genius report and it says that my natural way of being is this. Like even just having that conversation with a friend or family member and having them mirror back to you, like, yeah, you didn't realize that you were amazing at this whole time. And so having that reflected back to you, and then that opens up that space to become a safe space to start expressing that part of yourself a bit more. Purpose doesn't always have to show up in your job. I think a certain level of fulfillment, there needs to be things that align with your values for sure. But if you can start infusing purpose into your relationships at home and feel more fulfilled than if you had to have a singular job that fulfilled all aspects of purpose. So I think it's available in all aspects of our lives, and so we could start there for sure. It's the more natural place to start, and then start making the shifts in your career as it becomes more front of mind and more a natural way of your being again.
Yeah. I probably know this answer, but I'll ask the question anyway, because I'm sure it's on some people's mind. How long do you think it takes to go through that process, to either like go through those tools, but also grow through that self introspection journey of reconnecting with our purpose?
That's a great question. I think when you're doing it on your own and you don't know where to start, it can take a lot longer.
It could take years.
Yeah. And that was
Mhm.
my own journey as I kind of was piecing things together. I found along the way that kind of helped me reconnect all of those pieces. But that's what I offer in my coaching containers, kind of all of the steps that I went through. And so currently, it depends on the person. Like, how much
Mhm.
time do you have to spend in introspection? How much time do you have to kind of do that work of unearthing what those things are for you and creating that vision and getting that clarity that you need to move forward? So I know that there's some people that if growth is one of their values, like it is yours, you'll be super excited to dive right into the work. And
I'm gonna do those tests just after we hang up, 100%, just to
yeah,
check.
exactly. And so it might, with guidance, with a program, it might take you 3 months to
Mm.
be in a position where you're ready to make a huge shift in your life. For someone that wants to integrate a bit more, they like to marinate on things. They don't like to jump from topic to topic. It might take them 6 months, and that gives them a bit more space. And if you're just kind of thinking about it now, maybe listening to this conversation, it's only hitting you now that there might be a different future for you. You might need a bit more time to kind of let that sink in and decide if you're ready to make a change. So that might take you another 3 or 6 months to be ready to start doing the work. So it all depends, but it's how you naturally learn, like how committed you are, how much time you have. If you have a family on top of a full-time job, like you might only have an hour a week to put into it. So, but it's definitely achievable in as little as I would say 3 months.
Okay. Good to know. And I think you're right. It definitely depends on the person, so it might varies in terms of time frame. A quick exercise that I found helpful is to ask, if you're listening to this and wondering how to move forward, ask yourself, where do you see yourself in a year's time? Because sometimes that helps, like 19th of July, 2:24 UK time, or 6:24 on the side of Canada. um how would you like to wake up? How would you like to feel? What would you like your life to look like? And sometimes it's a really big eye opener of like, oh, I actually want things to be completely different. Or, well, I just have to make a few shift and I'll be all right. I think this exercise of like, going to the future can also help to just understand how much of the work you'd like to do, and therefore, like you said, the investment that you're ready to make into that.
Yeah, like if you want by the new year to be in a completely different job, you kind of have to get on top of things now. Yeah.
5 months to go, no pressure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Conscious of time, I mean, as usual, these things just flew by. Any final thoughts? Obviously, you gave us some great tests that people can get started with, but any final thoughts for anyone this summer looking to reconnect with their purpose?
Yeah, I think summer we can often, we just want to tune out. Like especially if we're feeling burnt out in work, like we just want a break. We just want to relax. And I think vacations can often be that thing that we look forward to, that we're like, I just need to get to this vacation and then I'll be okay. When in reality, the unfulfilled you, the burnt out you, is going to be the same person that comes back from vacation and gets back into their job.
Especially if you do a busy vacation of like back-to-back things, actually.
Exactly. You're just putting that version of yourself in a new location, which it could be beautiful for sure, but it doesn't change what you're coming back to, and it doesn't change the situation at home or in the job. So I would implore people to use summer, the slower days, like you said, as a time to reflect and maybe do some of the work, because you have the space to do it and you have a bit of that break, and to use it instead of kind of tuning out and distracting and avoiding what you might have to go back to in the fall if it's a summer vacation. Like, to use a bit of that time for yourself to commit to making a change, to commit to knowing yourself a bit better, to commit to making a shift in your life that's going to really impact you.
I love that. And I mean, in the spirit of transparency, obviously, feel free to share, in the chat or wherever you're ready, DM us, in terms of what you've decided to focus on. I know personally, I've used this summer as well on Fridays to explore what it means motherhood, because I have no clue and not necessarily specific models. So I know I've used this time on like Friday mornings to listen to podcasts, to read books, like be intentional about whatever it is that you want to explore and see whenever you can commit some time for it. But I love what you said. It's really, really great advice.
Yeah.
Any particular things you're focusing on this summer?
I'm diving into a lot around the Genius Report, and some really exciting tools that I've discovered that I think are game changers for the way that we do things, and the way
Human design, not to name a few.
Yeah, human design, the way that we do things in work, and the way that we hire, the way that we sell ourselves for a role. Yeah, I think there's some really big changes and shifts that need to happen that are coming.
Love that. Exciting. Well, anyone who wants to know more about these, obviously feel free to reach out to Jenny. Thank you so much once again for sharing that day very early with us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a great way to start my day.
Bye-bye.